Imagine the most feared creature in the world. Now imagine it crying. Not roaring. Not breathing fire. Not shaking the ground with its massive weight. Just crying. Standing at a kitchen door in the cold. Holding a small woven basket with both shaking hands. Looking up with the saddest eyes anyone had ever seen. That is exactly what happened one night. And nobody, not a single person in that village, expected what came next. This is the story of a dying dragon, a desperate child, and one completely ordinary human who made a decision that would quietly change the history of two entire species forever. But here is the thing that will really get to you. This story is not just about kindness. It is not just about bravery. By the end of this video, you will understand something about the nature of humanity. Something deep, something powerful, that most people never stop to think about. 3 things you need to know before this story begins. First, in this world, dragons never beg. Not ever. Begging is considered the single greatest shame a dragon can carry. To ask for help is to admit weakness. And in the world of dragons, weakness does not go unpunished. Second, no dragon had entered a human settlement alone in over 500 years. The last one who tried was never found again. No skulls. No bones. Nothing. Third, the dragon who knocked on that kitchen door was only 7 years old. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The world had a name. Vaelthar. It was an ancient place. Old in the way that only worlds built on top of other forgotten worlds can be. It had forests so thick that sunlight never touched the ground beneath them. Mountains with peaks so high that clouds gathered around their shoulders like old men wrapping cloaks. Rivers that cut through deep stone valleys, cold and fast and relentless, carrying water so clear you could count every pebble on the bottom from 20 feet above. It was a world full of magic. Not the kind from children's stories, not sparkles and wishes and wands. This was older magic. Quieter. The kind that lived in the roots of trees and the bones of mountains. The kind that moved through the soil like blood moves through a body. It was everywhere. It was in everything. And every creature that lived in Vaelthar carried a piece of it somewhere inside them. But more than magic, Vaelthar was a world divided. On one side, the dragons. Ancient and vast and powerful beyond easy description. They made their homes in the high peaks where the air was thin and sharp and cold enough to freeze breath mid-exhale. They hunted across wide valleys, ruled the sky without challenge, and returned to their stone nests before darkness came. They had their own language, deep and resonant, full of sounds that humans could not physically make. They had their own laws, their own history stretching back so many thousands of years that the earliest chapters had been forgotten even by the oldest among them. They did not trust humans. They never had. Not even once. On the other side, the humans. Smaller. Softer. Far more fragile. They built their towns in the low valleys near rivers and farmland where the soil was rich and the water was reliable. They kept animals. They grew food. They traded with each other on busy market days and gathered in warm buildings in the evenings to eat together and tell stories about the day's work. They were creative and persistent and, in their own way, quietly remarkable. But they lived in constant, unspoken fear of the sky. Every person in every human village in Vaelthar grew up knowing the same rule. If you see wings above you, get inside and do not come back out until they are gone. Children were taught this before they learned to read. It was as basic as breathing. Between the two worlds, there was nothing. No roads. No trade. No conversation. No shared laughter over shared food. Just a long, cold wall of distance and mistrust, built brick by brick over 500 years of war, misunderstanding, and loss. Every dragon believed humans were cunning and cruel. Every human believed dragons were monsters without feeling. And neither side had ever gotten close enough or stayed long enough to find out whether any of that was actually true. That was the world Zara was born into. She was small for her age. Smaller than most of the other young dragons in the northern nest by nearly a head. Her scales were a warm golden-brown color, like late summer honey catching afternoon light. Her wings, still growing, were too short to carry her very far or very fast. Her horns had just barely begun to push through the scales above her eyes, small and slightly crooked in a way that the other young dragons sometimes teased her about. But her eyes, wide, perfectly round, and the brightest shade of green Veilthar had ever produced, had a quality that was entirely her own. Zara looked at things. Really looked. Longer and harder and with more genuine curiosity than most dragons ever considered worthwhile. She noticed details. She asked questions that made older dragons shift uncomfortably. She had a habit of wandering slightly too close to the boundary lines of safe territory, just to see what was on the other side. Her mother called this her greatest gift. In the same breath, she called it her greatest danger. Her mother's name was Lisa. Among the dragons of the northern peaks, Lisa was well known. Not famous, dragons were not interested in fame but respected. She was tall and broad-winged, copper-scaled in a way that caught sunlight beautifully, with a voice so deep and strong that a single word from her could carry across an entire mountain face. Younger dragons stepped aside when she walked past. Elder dragons nodded their heavy heads in acknowledgement. She had earned that respect through years of patient, disciplined living and through the quiet authority that comes from being exactly who you are with no apology and no performance. But none of that mattered now. For the past 3 weeks, Lisa had not left her nest. It started as a cough. Small, dry, easy to dismiss. Zara barely noticed it at first. Dragons got coughs sometimes. It meant nothing. But the cough changed within days. It became wetter, heavier. It came in long, shaking fits that left Lisa lying flat, breathing hard, scales pressed to the cold stone. By the second week, Lisa's copper color had begun to fade. Not all at once, gradually like fire losing its fuel. Her eyes, always sharp and bright, had grown dim around the edges. She stopped eating. She stopped speaking. She lay curled in her nest with her wings pulled tight around herself, breathing in shallow, uneven waves that Zara counted from across the cave like a prayer. Zara did not sleep. Not properly. She sat beside her mother through every night, watching that great chest rise and fall, terrified of the moment it might simply stop. The elder dragons came. They stood at the entrance of the nest, looked in, murmured quietly among themselves, and left. One of them, an ancient, gray-scaled male named Corvith, who had been old when Lisa's grandmother was a hatchling, stayed a little longer. He pulled Zara outside and crouched down to her level, which was something elders rarely did, and spoke to her directly. "There is a sickness in her," he said in the old tongue. "It comes from the dark soil near the boundary forest. We have seen it before. Hundreds of years ago. It settles in the blood and pulls the fire out from inside, slowly, until there is nothing left." He paused. His eyes were not unkind. Just old. Just tired. "We do not have a cure. We never did." Zara stared at him. "Then what do we do?" "We wait," he said. "And we hope." He left. Zara went back to her mother's side and sat beside her until the sun came up. She did not wait. She was built for many things. Waiting was not one of them. As dawn broke and the other dragons slept, Zara climbed to the highest point of the nest rock, spread her small wings against the cold morning wind, and looked out across everything below. She could see the dark boundary forest far down in the valley. She could see the frozen river beyond it, glittering in the new light. And further still, soft and warm and golden, rising in thin, peaceful columns against the pale sky, the chimney smoke of a human village. She had never been that close before. Her mother had made the rule very clear. But her mother was dying. 3 nights ago, in one of her last fully conscious moments, Lisa had opened one heavy eye and found her daughter sitting right beside her. Her voice had been barely a whisper, barely shaped air. "The valley herbs," she had breathed. "The purple ones. Someone down there knows what to do with them. Old knowledge." A pause. "Go if you must. But come back." Then her eye had closed again. Zara stood on the rock in the cold morning air. She looked at the small woven basket she had packed the night before while everyone slept. Mountain vegetables. A bundle of purple herbs she had found near the lower treeline. A few round glowing fruits whose name she did not know but whose smell made her chest feel warm and calm. She picked up the basket, checked its weight, looked at the village one more time. Then she stepped off the rock, dropped fast into the open air, and let her wings catch the wind. She was 7 years old. She was alone. She was more afraid than she had ever been in her short life. And she did not turn back. The village was called Millhaven. It was the kind of place that looked different from the ground than it did from the air. From above, it was just shapes, brown and gray and cream-colored rectangles clustered together near a river bend. From the ground, it was real. Warm light in windows, the smell of bread, cobblestone roads worn smooth by years of foot traffic, a market square with wooden stalls, dogs, children, people calling out to each other across the road by their first names. The people of Millhaven had one rule that every child learned before anything else. Do not go past the river. Do not go near the mountains. And if you ever see wings against the sky, get inside and stay there until it is quiet. That rule had protected them for generations. It was about to be approached from completely the wrong direction. Zara landed at the tree line, just where the last forest shadows ended and the open farmland began. She folded her wings as flat as they would go. She crouched low in the undergrowth, and she watched. She had never been this close to humans before. Not really. From the air they were nothing, tiny, slow-moving specks far below. From here they were something else entirely. They moved with purpose. They called out to each other. They laughed. A farmer pushed a heavy wheelbarrow across a muddy field. A woman in a doorway shook out a blanket. 2 small children chased each other around a hay cart, both of them laughing so hard they kept stumbling over their own feet. They did not look like monsters, but she remembered what the elders said. Clever. Dangerous in ways that size could not predict. They worked in groups. They used tools. A single human might be manageable, but humans never came alone. She looked at the largest building near the center of the road. Wide double doors. Warm amber light visible even now. A chimney pumping steady white smoke. From inside, even at this distance, came something that smelled like nothing she had ever encountered. Warm and deep and complex. Rich in ways that made her feel, strangely, less afraid. Her mother's words came back to her. Someone down there knows what to do with them. She stood up, checked her grip on the basket, and walked out of the forest toward the village in full view in daylight, carrying a small basket of vegetables and every ounce of courage she had. The first person to see her was a small girl sitting on a fence post near the road. Maybe 8 years old, feet swinging, humming something to herself. She saw Zara step out of the tree line and went completely motionless. They stared at each other. 3 full seconds of complete silence. Then a man's voice broke it, sharp, alarmed, from somewhere across the road. Others were stopping now. People in doorways. A cluster of men at the far end of the road, muttering, pointing. A woman who pulled her child inside so fast the door swung hard behind them. Zara did not stop walking. She kept the basket raised. Both hands. Visible. She kept her wings flat against her back. She kept her eyes forward. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to fly, to get up and away and gone. But her mother's face was there every time she thought about stopping. Pale. Still. Those shallow waves of breath. She reached the double doors of the big building. She raised one clawed hand. And knocked. The man who opened the door was not what she had prepared herself for. She had expected something armored and loud. Something ready to fight. Something that matched the image every story she had ever heard painted of humans. Sharp and dangerous and fast. Instead, the door swung open and she found herself looking up at a tall, lean man with flour on his apron, a smear of something dark on his left cheek, and eyes that were tired in the way that people who work long, honest hours tend to be tired. Calm. Present. Not alarmed. His name was Marcus Hale. He was 34 years old. He had run the kitchen at Millhaven's only inn for 11 years. He had never done anything that anyone would call remarkable. He was not prepared for what was standing at his door. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Zara said the only words she had practiced on the entire flight south. She said them in the human tongue, haltingly, with a dragon's accent that made each syllable sound slightly musical. "Please," she said. "My mother is ill." She lifted the basket. "I was told, someone here knows what to do." Her voice broke on the last word. She pressed her mouth shut and waited. Marcus looked at her. He looked at the basket. He looked past her at the villagers frozen in the road behind her, watching. He looked back at the small dragon in front of him. Shaking so hard the vegetables in her basket were rattling quietly, eyes full of something he recognized so completely it stopped everything else in his mind. Desperation. Love. Terror of losing someone. He had worn that exact expression himself, standing in a hospital corridor 11 years ago, waiting for news about his mother. He stepped back from the door. "Come in," he said quietly. The kitchen was warm and bright and smelled like everything good about being alive. Zara stood just inside the door and turned slowly, taking it all in. Copper pots hanging from iron hooks. Bundles of dried herbs dangling from the ceiling beams. A large stone oven breathing steady heat from the far wall. Shelves lined with jars of every color. The whole room hummed with the quiet confidence of a space that had been used well, for a long time, by someone who genuinely knew what they were doing. Marcus closed the door. He could hear voices rising outside. Someone knocking. He walked to a low stool, set it near the center of the room, close to the warmth with space on all sides, and nodded at it. "Sit," he said. Soft. Steady. The same voice he used with frightened animals. "You are safe here." Zara sat. She set the basket on the floor in front of her. Both hands rested on top of it. Marcus crouched down to her eye level. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at the basket. "May I?" he asked. She moved her hands away. He examined each item carefully without touching anything. The mountain vegetables. The round glowing fruits. The bundle of purple herbs tied with a strip of dried grass. When he reached the herbs, he stopped. He picked them up slowly, brought them close to his face. He smelled them. Something shifted in his eyes, deep and sudden. "Where did you find these?" he said quietly. "Near the lower trees. The dark soil." He sat back. He was quiet. Then carefully he spoke. "My grandmother called these ashen bloom," he said. "She said the old healers used them. Long ago. Before people stopped talking to each other." He turned the bundle over in both hands. "She said they could pull a blood sickness out from the inside, but only if they were prepared the right way. Only with the right things cooked alongside them." Zara stared at him. "You know how?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I think so," he said simply. "Yes." Marcus moved fast. He did not ask many questions. He could see what time meant to her. He cleared his counter, brought out the herbs, and began working with the focused, efficient energy of someone who had spent over a decade inside that kitchen and knew exactly where every single thing was and exactly what it could do. Zara sat on her stool and watched every movement. She did not speak. She did not want to interrupt. She just watched. The way he crushed the purple herbs between two flat stones, releasing a dark oily liquid that smelled electric and ancient. The way he added the mountain vegetables one at a time, in a specific order that felt deliberate and important. The way he adjusted the fire beneath the stone pot with small, precise movements. Not too high, not too low, with the ease of someone who had done this 10,000 times. Took 40 minutes. Someone knocked hard at the kitchen door twice during that time. Marcus went each time, spoke quietly in the doorway, and came back to the stove without explaining. He just came back to the stove. When it was done, the liquid in the pot was deep and dark, nearly black with a surface that shimmered faintly. Not like oil. Like starlight pressed into liquid form. It did not look like any food Zara had ever seen. It looked like something older than cooking. Something closer to the magic that lived in Vaelthar's roots and rivers. Marcus ladled it into a sealed clay pot. He wrapped it in thick cloth to hold the heat. He tied it with cord, careful, tight, secure. He turned and handed it to Zara. She took it in both hands. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. It was a real question. Not accusatory. Not suspicious. Just honest. She genuinely needed to understand. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron. He thought about it the way someone does when the answer is obvious to them, but they know it still needs to be spoken out loud. "Because you asked," he said. "And because your mother is sick." He paused. "And because that should be enough." Zara held the pot against her chest. There was no word in the dragon tongue for what she felt in that moment. The language that had existed for thousands of years, rich and deep and full of sounds no human mouth could make. It had no word for this. For having your deepest fear answered by a stranger with nothing to gain. She bowed her head. Slowly. Low. A gesture that in dragon culture carried more meaning than almost any spoken word. It was reserved for moments of the deepest gratitude, the kind that language was too small to hold. Marcus looked a little surprised. He gave a small, sincere nod in return. Zara picked up her empty basket. Tucked the clay pot under her arm. She paused at the kitchen door and looked back one last time. "My name is Zara," she said. "If it works, I will come back and tell you." "I hope it works," Marcus said quietly. Then she was gone. She flew faster going back than she had come. The clay pot was warm and steady against her chest. The wind was at her back. And something else moved with her. Lighter than air and harder to name. Something that lived in the opposite direction from fear. She reached the mountain nest as the sun began to set, painting the high peaks in deep amber and burning orange. She landed hard and ran. Actually ran, skidding across the flat stone, to her mother's side. Lisa was still breathing. Barely. But still. Zara uncorked the clay pot. The smell that rose from it hit her like a wave, earthy and sharp and alive. Like rain meeting warm stone. Like the center of a very old forest after a storm. She tilted the pot carefully to her mother's lips and coaxed the medicine in. Slowly, drop by drop. The way she had once watched her mother tend to an injured animal that had stumbled into their nest unable to stand. She stayed there all night. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She sat with the empty clay pot in her lap and watched. Around the third hour before dawn, something changed. Subtle at first. The quality of her mother's breathing shifted. From shallow and ragged to something slower, deeper, more deliberate. Like a tide going out and then coming back with real intention. Then Lisa's scales, which had been gray and dim for over 2 weeks, began to change. Faint at first. Then brighter. The copper returning the way an ember returns to life when someone breathes on it gently. At dawn, Lisa opened her eyes. They were sharp. Burning. Fully present. She looked at her daughter and blinked once. The long, slow blink of a healthy dragon waking from deep sleep. "You went to the valley," she said. Her voice was rough and low. But it was her voice. Real and full and warm. "A human helped me," Zara said. Lisa was quiet for a long time. Something moved through her expression. Complicated, careful, deep. Something rearranging itself slowly, like stones shifting at the bottom of a river when the current changes direction. "Tell me everything," she said. So Zara did. She told her everything. About the flight south in the cold morning air. About the frozen farmland and the village chimneys. About the little girl on the fence post who had gone perfectly still. About the crowd gathering in the road. About walking toward those double doors on shaking legs, basket held high, not stopping even when every instinct said turn around. About Marcus, his flower-dusted apron, his quiet voice, the way he had recognized the ashen bloom immediately, the way he had moved through that kitchen with total focus and no fear, the way he had handed her the clay pot without hesitation, what he had said when she asked why. Because you asked, and because your mother is sick, and because that should be enough. Lisa listened to every single word. She did not speak until Zara finished. When she finally did, her voice was low and slow, like someone carrying something very carefully. In 500 years, Lisa said, not one dragon went to a human for help, and not one human offered it. A pause. We told ourselves it was because they were dangerous, selfish, too small to matter. Another pause. But the real reason is that we never asked. Zara looked at her mother. He was not what I expected, she said. Lisa held her gaze. No. I imagine he was not. 1 week later, Zara flew back to Millhaven. She landed at the big double doors and knocked the same way she had before. Marcus opened the door. Saw her standing there, wings folded, eyes bright. Mother's health returned, and his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen on a human face. She held out something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully. A scale. One of Lisa's own copper scales, freely given. On its polished surface, Lisa had scratched a mark with her own claw. A symbol from the most ancient dragon script. It meant, this one is a friend. Marcus did not know the language, but he held it as though he did. She got better? He asked. She got better, Zara said. He laughed, quiet to himself, and shook his head slowly, the way someone does when something good happens that they were not sure they deserved to be part of. Good, he said. That is really good. They stood there, a young dragon and a middle-aged human chef, in the doorway of a small kitchen in a small village. In a world that had spent 500 years insisting they were enemies. Neither of them said anything for a moment. They did not need to. That one act, a child asking and a stranger answering, was the first thread of a completely new story. A story that would take years to fully unfold, that would touch hundreds of lives across both mountains and valleys, that would eventually, slowly, begin to undo the wall that centuries of fear had built. But it began right there, at that door, because of one dying dragon, one impossible request, and one ordinary man who decided that was enough of a reason. Here is the thing this story quietly hides inside itself. In almost every story you will ever find, across history, across cultures, across every world that has ever existed, two groups who fear each other follow the same pattern. Each side tells itself the other one is the dangerous one. Each side warns its children. Each side builds walls and calls those walls wisdom. And generation after generation, nobody tests whether those walls are actually protecting anything at all. The wall stays up not because it is necessary. It stays up because nobody is brave enough to knock on the door. Zara was 7 years old and shaking with fear. She flew into the most dangerous place her world told her existed. She walked through a crowd of strangers staring at her with wide, alarmed eyes. She raised her fist and knocked on a door she had no guarantee would open from the other side. And on the other side was Marcus. An ordinary man. Flour on his apron. Tired from a long morning. He looked at the creature his entire civilization had called a monster for 500 years. And he saw something else. A child. Afraid. Asking for help. For someone she loved. That was all he needed to see. This is the truth buried at the center of this story. The most powerful force in any world is not fire, not armies, not ancient magic, and not fear. It is the willingness to walk toward someone while you are still afraid, and to open the door when they knock. One act of kindness quietly changed two species. Not a treaty, not a war, not a law passed by a council. One cook, one small dragon, one clay pot of medicine passed through a kitchen door. The wall came down one brick at a time after that. Took years. It was not easy. But it started here. If the story opened your eyes, even just a little, to how much weight a single act of real compassion can carry, then stay right here. Because the next story we are about to tell pushes that idea into territory you are genuinely not ready for yet. Let us bring everything back to where this began. A dying dragon. A desperate child who refused to accept the only option the world offered her. And one completely ordinary man with flour on his apron who opened his door and said 2 words that changed everything between 2 species. Come in. The 3 things this story leaves behind are worth carrying with you today. First, fear builds walls that keep out enemies and friends with exactly the same efficiency. It does not sort. It does not choose. It just keeps everything out. And the longer the wall stands, the more certain people become that it was always necessary. Second, courage is not the absence of shaking. Zara was shaking every step of the way from the forest edge to that kitchen door. Courage is walking forward while you shake. It is choosing the important thing over the comfortable thing. It is knocking even when you have no idea what is on the other side. Third, and this one is the most important, kindness does not need a reason, a reward, a history, or a relationship to be real. Marcus did not help Zara because he knew dragons. He did not help her because he expected something in return. He helped her because she asked, and because her mother was sick, and because in his mind, in his very quiet, very ordinary, very human mind, that was simply enough. That is what HFY means. Not humans being the biggest. Not humans winning every fight. It means humans choosing to be good when they had every reason not to be. It means humanity at its truest and most powerful. This is what this channel is built on. Stories that show you what people, real or fictional, are capable of when they choose decency over fear. Stories that remind you that the most extraordinary moments in history are almost never made by armies or kings. They are made by one person at one door making one choice. If the story moved you, if it made you feel something real, hit the like button right now. It is 1 second of your time and it helps more people find stories like this one. Stories that actually matter. If you are new here and this is your first time watching, welcome. This channel posts new HFY and sci-fi stories every week. Every single one written to stay with you long after the video ends. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Now, here is the question we want you to answer in the comments right now. Which moment in this story hit you the hardest? Was it Zara stepping out of the forest alone into full view of the village? Was it Marcus saying, because you asked and because that should be enough? Or was it the copper scale at the end, scratched with the word that meant friend? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. And your answers directly shape the stories we choose to tell next week. And if you want more right now, the next story is already waiting for you on screen. Takes place in the same world 1 year later. What happens between the dragons and the humans of Millhaven when they begin, carefully, slowly, uncertainly, to actually talk to each other will genuinely surprise you. Click that video right now and we will see you there in just a moment. This has been HFY Sci-Fi. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. And remember this. The next time someone unexpected knocks on your door, someone afraid, someone small, someone your whole world told you to distrust, you might just be Marcus. Open it.